a lot of single mothers expressing their displeasure or their dissatisfaction with present fathers who portray themselves as active, where they'll be like, I just gave you some money. I just gave you some money for some shoes. And so if a father is doing these things for a young man, a young woman, most would say he's an active father, right? People will conclude that they will say that's what an active father is supposed to do. You know what I mean? And I just have the other question to ask is, does a father have to be active in a child's life, or is it predetermined? So there's a theory called determinism, where people believe that your life was planned out for you not only the day you was born, some even believe before you were born. Those who subscribe to this sort of mysticism or religious ideology believe that your life was already planned out for you by God, and that there's a supreme being who knows every move and every decision that you're ever going to make. And if that's the case, plausibly or logically speaking, if there's a supreme being that knows every move that you're going to make and has already seen the outcome of them, has your life been predetermined? And if your life has been predetermined, would it matter if your father was active in it or not? Even mother, let's just not even say father, but let's just say parents. If your life was predetermined at birth or even before then, if you subscribe to the religious ideology, would it matter if your mother and father were active? Now, be very clear. I'm using the word active, not present. Right? We already disclosed that an active father is someone who actively leads, teaches, and trains you up in the ways you ought to be. A present father is there to provide and protect and to make sure that you have a quality of life. But that doesn't necessarily make them active. I think a lot of fathers think that they're active fathers because they're present, which is the basics. That's the bare minimum. And you often see a lot of single mothers expressing their displeasure or their dissatisfaction with present fathers who portray themselves as active, where they'll be like, I just gave you some money. I just gave you some money for some shoes. And it'll be like 2 months done pass. Or it'll be like, I do have my kids, woo, woo, woo. But you really only pick them up for about a couple hours or so. To me, that's a present father. That's not really an active father. Because an active father covers a lot of bases. It covers so many bases that the mother really can't even keep up with it because there's always something going on. The kids can't keep up with it. You wouldn't even have time to ask, where my daddy at? You know what I mean? You wouldn't have to ask your father to spend time with you because he would actively already have things laid out for you to do. That's what I would consider an active father. Got books that they expect you to not only read, but give a report on. Got skills that they not only expect you to learn, but be able to do them efficiently. And health-wise has not just a workout routine, but just specific fitness goals that they have for you that they want to see you reach. And so to stimulate the mind, body, and the spirit, last but not least, the teachings that they teach you as it pertains to spirituality or theology. Though that's what an active father would do. Again, a present father is making sure that the provisions are there. You got food. They're making sure that the protection is there. You got shelter, right? And provisions also go with clothing. So food, clothing, and shelter. You know what I mean? And that's just what a present parent would do, in my opinion, right? So that's the difference between an active father and a present father, right? And if we are to believe that determinism is real, then we also have to consider the antithesis or the other end of the spectrum, which is existentialism. Now, existentialism says that we all make our own choices and our life is shaped by the choices that we make. And so that doesn't have a cutoff. So that means when you were 2 years old and you made a choice, that put your life in a different box than it would have been had you made another choice. So if you playing with Legos and blocks and things versus playing with, I don't know, little army men's or something, it would have an impact on where you decide to go in life. If you decided to play basketball instead of football, it would change the course of your life. That's what people who subscribe to existentialism believe. But even if you believe in existentialism, I'm not necessarily sure that changes the outcome, right? If you don't believe that life is predetermined and that your choices ultimately shape who you become, I don't know if that changes the outcome of the original question that I just asked. And that is whether or not being an active parent has any impact or influence on how a child is going to develop, right? And whether or not a parent has to be active in a child's life for it to go in a certain direction, right? Because we already stated that if you believe in predeterminism, it doesn't matter if the father was active or not. Your life was already planned out for you either at birth or before you were born if you subscribe to the religious ideology. And existentialism says that every choice you made ever since you were able to make choices, your life was going to go in the direction that your choices presented to you. And so whether or not your parent was active, they still aren't influencing the choices that you have to make, because at the end of the day, it's up to you. How many times did your parents tell you to do something, you didn't do it? Boy, what did Craig Daddy tell them? Didn't I tell you to get up and take out that trash? Craig didn't take out the trash, right? So in that scenario itself, that existential decision that he made could have resulted in something different for his life had he took the trash out when his daddy told him. But even though his father was giving him active instruction, he chose to do what he chose to do. And he said he fell asleep. And so it doesn't mean conscious decisions or conscious choices. It just says the choices that you make. So even subconsciously, you can make a choice, right, that you didn't ultimately think about before you did it, and it changed the whole course of your life. Whether or not your parent was active, that's not going to have any bearing on that scenario. Whether or not that would happen, it's not going to make a difference. And like many people believe that every child is different. Many people believe that every person is different. I'm one of those people. I believe that every individual is a unique individual. You are your own entity, right? That you being your individual has nothing to do with anybody else. And so if a child is his own individual, it has nothing to do with his parents, right? Even though they came together to make him, they would be two ends of the spectrum coming in the middle to make the child. And so even if you think about a spectrum, let's just use the pH scale. You have basic at one end and acidic at the other end. And in the middle, you have neutrality, which is water, and that's not the same elements, is it? And it can be, this particular analogy or another one, but your parents don't have to be at opposite ends of the spectrum for it to remain true, because even in the microcosm, it's still going to narrow itself down to the middle of what that is. So if your parents were both basic or both acidic, you would still be the medium between those 2 points, no matter how large or big. Let's say, excuse me, your father was a 1 and your mother was a 2, or your father was a 1 and your mother was a 1.1, you would still meet the middle of that spectrum, whatever that is, and you would be something else entirely. No matter what the determinism or the existentialism, the existential choices that you make, or the predetermined outcome that your life was supposed to be, it wouldn't really make a difference, based on the fact that every individual is unique and every child is unique. So based on those unique personality traits, you would have a completely different outcome, and whether or not your parent was active or not wouldn't make a difference because of those personal traits that you have, those personality traits that you have. And if that's to be believed, then the answer is unchanged. Whether a parent is active or not, the child will make their own decisions and control their own fate and destiny.